Hold on tight, guys, because today we're talking about one of the boldest and most talked about Mossad operations ever to take place. The incredible, the elaborate, the complex assassination of Ismail Haniyeh deep in the heart of Tehran. And the reason we're here talking about this today is because this operation showcases the ability of the Israeli Mossad to penetrate deep into the heart of Tehran, under the nose of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, to carry out an execution against Ismail Haniyeh, one of the heads of Hamas, inside a compound that is supposed to protect the very guests of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. This is the kind of operation that up till now, it's been over a year since this took place, that till this very moment still puts fear in the hearts of people. Still, the enemies of Israel wake up sweaty at night thinking that this too might happen to them. So today we break down this incredible story. This is a new version of a story. We call it Boots on the Ground Explainers, trying to break down the incredible stories behind the news of what happens here in this part of the world. Now, before we go any further, pause for a second and make sure you like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another one of these videos. Okay, so here's what happened in this operation. This is a really interesting story. Make sure to watch this through the end because it's unbelievable how this was carried out. So first of all, let's start with who was Ismail Haniyeh? Well, Ismail Haniyeh is one of the symbolic heads of the Hamas terrorist organization and was so for many, many years. But for the majority of that time, he wasn't on the top of the target list for the Israeli forces or Israeli intelligence organizations because he resided mostly outside of Israel, outside of Judea and Samaria and outside of the Gaza Strip, and wasn't considered to be an immediate threat to the state of Israel or the people of Israel. Much higher on the list were names like Muhammad Def, an arch-terrorist, that resided in different places, but then in the Gaza Strip. Yahya Sinwar, let's call it the head of the military arm, the man who carried out, executed, and planned the October 7th attacks. And Haniyeh is something different. He's this very symbolic character. He's the head of sort of the diplomatic office of the Hamas, and he resides mostly in Qatar, or Doha, the capital of Qatar, a small country, a small oil kingdom in the Arabian Sea. And this is where the story gets interesting. This all changes on the day of October 7th, 2023, when Israel is attacked by Hamas, who invade our land, break through our borders, murder, mutilate, assassinate, and kidnap the citizens of this country. Everything changes for the state of Israel, and a decision is made that also this man, Haniyeh, also needs to be removed from the table. He's one of the people behind the scenes working on this. He's one of the people funneling the money in, and that means he no longer gets to reside with the rest of humanity because of what he did. So here's what happened. On July 31st, 2024, so about a year plus ago, the end of the story is Haniyeh, who's sleeping inside a guarded compound in the heart of Tehran, the capital of Iran, mysteriously blows up by an explosive charge. And let me contextualize what is happening here. He's in Iran for ceremonies related to someone else who was assassinated, Qasem Soleimani. Anyway, long story. He's in Iran as a dignitary who's visiting, and he's sleeping within a compound controlled by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, an important party to remember here. And what they do, they're sort of the executive arm, let's call it, of the Islamic government, or the radical Islamic government that rules the country of Iran. And Ismail Haniyeh is their official guest, traveling on business, as they say, to Iran. He's sleeping within a very guarded, very secure compound. This is a place he's visited before multiple times. And as he sleeps there, a charge goes off, killing him and injuring others in the area. And the big story here is, how did the Mossad get to Ismail Haniyeh? Initially, it's expected to be, and the Iranian government, if I remember correctly, even says that it was an accident that had to do with a gas leak or some made-up story along those lines. But very quickly, the facts come out, the facts surface, and it's clear that likely the Israeli Mossad and possibly others were behind this assassination. And think about this picture. One of our biggest enemies, the Iranians, in the heart of their capital, Tehran, in the most guarded compound that they control, that their elite forces, the IRGC, controls, one of their top guests is eliminated by Israeli intelligence. And what that tells you is the level of penetration that took place into the intelligence apparatus of the IRGC, the level of intelligence that we were able to extract in that time, and the level of lethality that our intelligence organization is able to carry out. This isn't something of, let's call it a nuclear scientist who's blown up on the way to one of their nuclear facilities. This isn't a guy who lives in Iran. This is a visitor that in exact timing, as he's entering into a guarded compound, is assassinated by, again, the Israeli intelligence organization. So how does this happen? So the facts are mind-blowing. It turns out that months before this visit, Israeli intelligence, and again, I don't know if this is Israelis on the ground in Iran or Iranians that were hired or convinced or someone else, a bomb was planted in the very bedroom that Ismail Haniyeh was going to sleep in. And this bomb is planted in a way that even though they look for bugs and they sweep these rooms and there's security everywhere all the time in many, many different ways, a bomb is planted in a way that it goes undiscovered for multiple months. And again, let's get to how this thing works. When he enters the room, we get intelligence that he is indeed within the room, in the bed he's supposed to be in, and then a charge is remotely detonated. So there's communication going in and out of this compound that wasn't caught. There's a bomb that was planted multiple months before that wasn't spotted, even though they swept this room and searched for it multiple times. They didn't have exact information, but they have security protocols in place for these kind of things. And even though all these things were done, Israeli intelligence was able to eliminate him in his sleep in the heart of this compound. So there's another point here that I forgot to make, which is that part of the reason that Israel decides to go after Ismail Haniyeh in a more aggressive manner is because it becomes very apparent when the October 7th war breaks out that he isn't just this figurine that stands in the head of the organization. The man is deeply involved in the planning, the execution, and the funding of the egregious acts of terrorism against Israel in October 7th. And because of that, it's clear what needs to be done with him. He needs to be removed from every position of influence and also removed from a citizen of this earth. And that's exactly what happens to him. I think this is a just and understandable action. And it was also done as a show of power by Israeli intelligence to send a clear message that any terrorist, and especially the leaders of terrorist organizations, that comes against Israel, his fate, his justice will meet him sooner rather than later. We need to ask another question, which is why this assassination takes place inside Iran and not in another country. So Ismail Haniyeh travels mostly in 3 different locations. He resides in Doha, Qatar, so within a country. Qatar is a tricky relationship because Qatar is both what we call it, a frenemy of the state of Israel. They're the people behind Al Jazeera. They're the people that funded Hamas, but they're not purely enemies of the state of Israel. They've even been involved on multiple levels in much of the negotiations that have taken place between Israel and between Hamas and other entities, Palestinian entities, over past years. So they're not distinctly an enemy, and it would have jeopardized the relationship with them to try and assassinate him in Qatar proper. Another option is Turkey. He frequented Turkey. Turkey, by the way, for many years was a sort of safe haven for Hamas high-level delegates. But again, Turkey is a very big, a very powerful, another frenemy of the state of Israel. And even though they've been on the path of escalation and the path of ever-escalating violence against the state or the people of Israel, it's not official war. We still do negotiate with them, we still do cooperate with them, and I'd say in a larger scheme of things, they're also, to a certain degree, allies of many European countries and the Americans, and they're not the kind of country you want to carry out assassinations or targeted attacks on its own soil. It would be an absolutely huge diplomatic incident, and that leaves us with Iran. Iran, it's as funny as it may seem, assassinating someone on the soil of Iran isn't high stakes for Israel. There are sworn enemies. This comes from them, by the way, not from us. We have nothing personal against them, but their entire agenda, their entire philosophy is all about destroying Israel and destroying the US. So we would have no problem carrying out an attack on their soil, and we've done so many times before, and thus the location is chosen to carry out an assassination within Iran. So one might ask ourselves, how did Israel know that Haniyeh was going to be in the exact room, in the exact compound on that date and time? And this is where I think he sort of handed us an unfair advantage. It turns out he was a creature of habit, and I guess the Iranians were too, in the way they hosted him, where he would repeatedly visit the same compound and possibly stay in the exact same room. And I say this because it is possible, and I don't know this as a fact, that there was more than one bomb, but what we do know is that he repeatedly came back to the same place at least 7 or 8 prior times to this visit, which allowed us to plant the bomb, plan the attack, plant the bomb, and then carry it out knowing that he just was a creature of habit and kept going back to the same place. I think most people that try, that know that there's a target on their back, they try not to create a pattern that is predictable. And in this case, it really played into the hands of the Israeli Mossad, the fact that Haniyeh did exactly that, carried out a pattern that was repetitive and predictable. So right before we go into the events of the night of the attack on Ismail Haniyeh that ended the life of Ismail Haniyeh, Israel's sworn enemy, I want you to pause this video for just a second after I say this next bit and consider supporting this channel. I don't say this lightly. We keep running because of the support of viewers like you. And this channel has seen growth, and it's seen incredible response over the past 18 months, but for multiple years now. We deeply value every type of support that we received. And I want to ask you to take just 1 second and consider supporting this channel, TBN Israel, to keep helping us create content and tell the truth from Israel. That is something that now more than ever is needed around the world, and we need you at home to help us keep that happening. There's a link at the bottom of the screen in the description of every single video that we create. It doesn't take much, just a small donation, and especially an ongoing small donation makes a huge difference. The operation was planned down to the last detail. An explosive device larger than originally planned, due to technical constraints, was planted in Haniyeh's room in advance. In fact, multiple months in advance, as we know now. That means Mossad's shadow operatives bypassed security undetected and gained unrestricted access without arousing any suspicion for multiple months. The Mossad created an entry into the room, into the facility, and into the room itself to plant the charge, and then were able to conceal its location for multiple months. But at the last moment, everything almost blew up, pun intended, due to a simple technical malfunction. The air conditioner in Haniyeh's room broke down and he had to leave. Imagine that, just seconds before the detonation. The operation was hanging by just a thread. There was a concern his room would be replaced, but in the end, the AC was repaired and he returned to his original room until he ascended to heaven, or wherever he went. Around 1:30 a.m., so in the middle of the night, a massive explosion shook the quiet compound. Understand this, in a hospitality facility, there's a first aid team. They hear the blast and rush inside, only to find a scene I don't think any of them imagined they would find. After about a minute, the medical team pronounces him dead. So clearly there wasn't much consideration over the situation. The precision assassination in the heart of Tehran sowed unprecedented panic in the Iranian leadership, and understandably so. The Quds force commander, Khani, disappears for 3 entire weeks, essentially going underground for fear of his own assassination. No one saw him. If Khani is scared, it's as if the whole regime is expressing fear from the situation. The question still troubling the Iranian leadership today is, as it was many months ago when this took place, who helped the Mossad in this complex operation? And if you want to know too, click the subscribe button, because we're about to tell you. So the big question that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian government, has in their head after this takes place is, how did they do it? And you would say, well, here's the technical details and stuff like that, but that's not really the question. How does the Mossad gain access to get the intelligence needed? How do they get into the room? How do they get out of the room? And how do they maintain communication and knowledge of what's happening in there? And this all summarizes or boils down to one word that's called a mole. Clearly, there was a mole or multiple moles within Iranian intelligence organizations, which is what allowed Israel to gain that level of access and that level of information. And since this has happened, it's very hard to underestimate how much panic and how much fear this put in the heart of the Iranian government. They go on this witch hunt looking for moles, etc. But just imagine in your head the level of distrust and the level of fear that it gives people to see such a thing happen. And I think that's a logical thing. I mean, after the attack of October 7th, that Iran is absolutely behind to a certain degree. Hamas executed, but it was part of their greater plan. And after decades of fighting against Israel, it makes sense that this is the kind of response that they would get. And I think on a psychological level, this seems like an incredibly successful operation. It seems that an operation of this magnitude couldn't have been carried out without significant help from inside Iran and the Iranian government. This kind of thing requires a network of operational capabilities. And apparently something involved many people betraying their country, by the way, knowingly or unknowingly. Because if you've tracked the MO of the Mossad over the years, they've been very, very clever about doing these kind of things without people knowing they're helping Israel. And when you think about Supreme Leader Khamenei hearing that this happened under his watch, within his country, I mean, forget the fear. You know, they did the usual thing of saying, let's attack Israel, let's retaliate Israel. But there's a huge embarrassment here where Israel is able to penetrate deep into the organization and they realize that whatever missiles, whatever forces they have, we're still able to work within their cities themselves. And this kind of operation is exactly what tells us the incredible story of the Israeli Mossad. How time and time again, and the stories are countless, we're going to go into many of them in the future, time and time again, the Mossad is able to reach the enemies of Israel at the farthest corners of the earth and do so quietly and without leaving tracks behind. In fact, unless our Minister of Defense at the end of last year would have publicly admitted that we were behind this, it wouldn't have been known till this time that Israel was officially behind this attack. I think we're at the end of this video. If you've lasted so long, thank you, and thank you for being with us. Take one more moment to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And if you are a praying person, put in a prayer for the people of Israel, because this has been a rough season for this country. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem, the land of Israel, and make sure you come back and watch the next video. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.